This entitled mum is about to risk everybody's safety at a local go-kart track, all because she wants her toddler to ride on a go-kart 3 times too big for them. How will these safety officers stop her, and what crazy thing will she do next? Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. So, background. It's fall, I work at a farm that set up mini rides and hires a bunch of random workers, ranging from even 10 years old to about 18. Everyone's young that works there, and mostly it's everyone's first job, to work the rides. I'm about the oldest there, not going to share my age online, but I was working at the kart races. It's just a dirt path made in a circle around a line of 6 apple trees, nothing much, and the ride's simple. Now this is very important to the story, but we have a total of 6 karts. There are 4 big blue ones, and I mean, if a toddler tried to ride them, they would fail, because their legs wouldn't be long enough. It is physically impossible for them to try and ride, and you can usually tell on sight who can and cannot ride them. Then there's only 2 small red ones, which are really small, and made for toddlers and small kids. This causes problems, since usually we attract a lot of smaller kids to the karts than bigger kids. So typically the line is filled to the brim with kids who can't ride the bigger karts. Another note, the ride ends at 5. This happened at 4:55. Coworkers wear this giant red jacket that states we work there, so you can tell very quickly that we work there. There's 3 people in this group, a woman, an older woman, and the father with the young girl. Now, on site, this girl is obviously way too small for the blue ones, and so is everyone else in line. Myself and a coworker, who looks 13 by the way, were at the station. There was a blue kart open, and for laughs, I said he could go ahead and ride it. There's no one else in line big enough for it, and if someone wanted to go on, I'd obviously have to get him off. This is where the older woman got annoyed.
Doesn't that boy work here?
Yes.
Then why the F is he playing on it instead of doing his darn job? There's other kids in line.
Me caught off guard. Well, he's had a long shift, so I figured he could have a chance to ride it once. When he comes back around, I'll take him off. The mum mumbling,
Freaking knowing brats.
This is when I saw the problem. They were second in line, had a kid, saw an employee on a cart, and became convinced that was supposed to be their cart and that we were disrespecting them. They didn't connect the very clear facts that their kid was way too small for the blue cart, that I was covering the front, and that there was someone else in line in front of them. Also to note, everyone else in line, including the children, were not bothered by this. Not even their own children were complaining. For the next 5 minutes, they complained constantly about us under their breaths. And the mum even pointed to us and talked about how annoying we were, right next to us. My coworker got off the bike, obviously, and I filled him in by whispering, "Blondie's a Karen." Not the best thing to say, but it fit the description. Then after 5 minutes, one of the kids got off a large blue bike. Now this was down the path, a bit away from my seat, where I sit to make sure kids don't run each other over, and so I have a good view of the area. But it was far away from the bike. I don't even know what the blonde woman was doing on the dirt road, but she was on it for some reason. And I cannot stress this enough, the moment the kid got off, she immediately grabbed hold of the cart and pushed it to the side and straight into a tree. It's harder to pull them out of the grass, so I kindly asked her not to do that. Right after I said that, the other woman, the mother, turned and just snapped.
Well, do your darn job.
I can't do my job if you don't let me do my job.
She wouldn't be doing your job if you were doing it.
What did she expect me to do? Suddenly teleport over to the cart on command? I barely had a chance to stand up. I have to sit in that specific location to make sure I have the greatest view of the track. My job, and its only description, is to make sure kids don't run over other kids. That's it! Technically, I was doing my job. I chose to help organize who gets on and off, so more kids can play. She was right over there. I didn't get the chance to do my... The mum interrupting me.
Will you shut your darn mouth and do your freaking job? We paid $5. You get paid hourly to do your job.
To be honest, I almost laughed. They paid a whole $5 just to get a wristband to do all of the rides and was snapping because... reasons? Me trying to remain calm. Ma'am, please try to calm down. Don't tell me what to do. About this point, the other woman started yelling, and my coworker stepped in as well to help me. Keep in mind, literally no one else, who was further behind these people in line, was freaking out. Only these people had a problem with it, and everyone else had understood why this logic was stupid and was on my side. They didn't notice, or they didn't care enough to realize that they were acting like entitled parents. I'm gonna have to ask you guys to leave.
No, we aren't going anywhere.
Your child is no longer allowed on this ride. We won't be giving them a cart. You all have a fantastic day. Please never come here again. And whoever is behind them in line can go next if they would like. They sort of stormed off at this point, but this was when the dad really started to shine his insane behavior. Keep in mind, my station is in the very back of the farm, and all of my coworkers are younger than me, so realize that I was the one who had to control the situation. Not to mention, it's near a bad part of the neighborhood, and the guy was big and looked like he might legitimately attack me. I am not making someone like that angry to their snapping point. The dad started yelling at us, but mainly my coworker, who was also getting very angry. The dad threatened to attack my coworker. Remember, looks 13 or younger, and this dad is at least mid-30s, so yikes, and was screaming, jabbing his finger in our direction. He continued to threaten an attack. Also, I have to add, they cussed in every sentence, in front of a bunch of children. Go ahead, attack a teenage boy. How sad is it to attack a teenage boy who's 3 times smaller than you? Do it, I dare you. Dad storming towards us.
Fine, I will.
A little bit passed, and mainly now it's my coworker who's fighting back, but I'm backing him up.
You guys are the employees who work here. You shouldn't act like freaking jerks.
I'm going to just say she said a lot of bad insults here. You're the adults here. You should act like it. We finally managed to split our separate ways, but I could see the dad at the petting zoo next to me. He'd start to walk towards us, stop, then walk back. He kept eyeing my coworker, and I realized that he might actually snap and attack him. That's when it became terrifyingly real to me. There was no one between us, and the only people around were either young coworkers, mostly elderly grandparents watching children, and me. And I was the only one closest to my coworker. If he did decide to attack, I'd be the only one decently able to stop him. If I didn't, my coworker might actually get killed by this man, and I'd be the only one able to somewhat stop it. I don't know what I was planning, but I was legit afraid for my coworker's life. So I held my pretty sturdy water bottle, and I was actually trying to figure out how best to swing it if the guy did break. He barely listened to us while rational. What could happen if he did decide to attack? One good swing, one of us could fall onto the metal carts with our head, and no one else to stop him. It wasn't a good situation, really, and it was the first time I felt so genuinely terrified of someone, just because his daughter couldn't go on a bike that wasn't even her size. I understood it could be frustrating to see a worker on the ride, but it should only take a second to realize that, oh crap, no one else can ride that ride, and it's completely fair for him to get a much needed break. The other people in line not only apologized to us, they also agreed to stay with us until my own dad, who's also a big dude, arrived to escort us from our station to our car. One of them even leaned over and whispered that they were probably druggies and were on something at the time. That's how bad their overreaction was. I even let the remaining customers' children ride however long they wanted, and stayed past 20 minutes after my shift ended to let them keep playing. Meanwhile, the children of the entitled parents didn't get a chance. I feel a little bad for the kid, but I didn't want them to get their way, and the kid didn't look like they even wanted to ride it that much. They just shrugged and went to pet the animals, no crying or anything. Much more mature than their parents. The final kick in the story was that when we were leaving with my dad, I told the remaining customers, very loudly in front of the entitled parents, how well behaved their kid was and how well they raised them. I got a lot of glares, but they never once got to go onto the ride, and now everyone who was there hated them. There was about 7 people in line behind them, and not a single one disagreed with me, since they all watched it go down and obviously saw how stupid the people were. In addition, several coworkers came over to ask what happened after they'd heard the screaming and cussing, and now it's quickly spreading throughout the farm. It was a terrible encounter, but at least they never did get the final laugh, since they never got to ride the carts. And if they go to complain, that won't work. The bracelets are only $5, so asking for a discount is laughable, and the manager wouldn't be able to fire me because I'm quitting. I was on the fence about the job anyway, and this about sealed the deal. Screw those parents, and I hope that kid turns out better than they did. This story sounds completely reasonable to me. I mean, putting your toddler on a motorized cart is gonna have risk involved anyway. Why would you want them on a cart that's too big for them? Isn't that obvious? It sounds like the parents just wanted the most value out of their $5 bracelet, and I guess the carts would have done that. But the kid didn't even want to do it anyway, at least it didn't seem like it. Just another case of entitled parents causing pain for everyone, unnecessarily. Small backstory, my mum and dad divorced when I was in 5th grade. I'm on the lower spectrum of autism and didn't understand anything that was really happening during the time. I'm 22 now and I understand everything, but growing up all I knew was that my younger sister, 3 years younger than me, and I would see our biological dad every weekend, to every other weekend, and sometimes on holidays. He got a new girlfriend. My mum met my stepdad. Both sides had a child, my half-brother from my mum's side and my half-sister on my dad's. Both are less than a year apart. About the end of middle school, my sister and I were seeing my biological dad every other weekend. I'll say it now, my dad when I was little and before the divorce was an incredible father. I was known as the daddy's girl and I loved him to the ends of the world. He taught me how to make omelets, allowed me to stir the mac and cheese, brought us to many places which I still love. That was before he met this girlfriend. At first she was okay. She knew how to bake really well and enjoyed watching cooking shows. And I'll say this now that she isn't thin. She isn't even average. She was big, like big, and she was very religious. At first, being super naive at my ripe young age of 10, I didn't understand the little things she would do. My hair was really long back then, about down to my hips. I hated how long it was, so I didn't care if it got knots or tangled or anything. I was just too quiet and nervous to have it cut, so it stayed long. In middle school, I was signed up to do dance classes, in an attempt to help me make friends with kids my age. Lol, didn't work out for me, and was required to have your hair up in a bun. I just couldn't figure out how to tie it up. She would make comments about how I was a slow snail and got mad at me when I asked for help, saying it was ridiculous for someone my age to not know how to put my hair in a bun. I remember crying about this and for my dad to tell me to suck it up. Eventually, as I got older, I was developing in ways I didn't like. In dance class, all the other kids were like twigs. I was this curvier, thicker kid, very quiet and shy, and no one wanted to be around me. I was still this incredible and passionate dancer, but the way I looked made me feel off about myself. On top of the comments from this girlfriend, it really hit my self-esteem. I was still unaware of the things this girlfriend would do and how badly it affected my eating. My sister was way more aware of things she would do to me that I just couldn't see. I remember one evening, while my dad was grabbing things from the store and his girlfriend was watching us, we were in this area that was halfway between the kitchen and the living room. There was a bag of chips on the counter that we would take a few pieces out of while chatting. My sister was showing different dance moves. The girlfriend was talking and I was listening and eating the chips. I remember specifically that I did not finish the bag. There was still plenty left for 2 more full servings. She suddenly grabs the chip bag to put away and notices how empty, in her eyes, it was, and she straight up loses it at me. I could only sit there in shock as she tells me I was going to grow up to be a fat and disgusting woman, talking about my period, God hates gluttons, and how crappy my self-control was if I couldn't stop myself from eating half a bag of chips. I ended up crying in the bathroom and didn't eat for the rest of that day. I was a rather picky eater. I didn't like Mexican, Asian, pizza, hamburgers, various sandwiches, etc. And many food items I had to have ketchup with it. It was pretty bad. I'm getting better about it now, but it was a huge safety net for me to dip it in ketchup when trying new food. But still, I was very, very picky. Both Dad and his girlfriend knew that very well. I don't remember when this started, but she started to not care about how picky I was. I don't like warm and mushy fruit, so blueberry pancakes were a big no for me. Instead of making a separate as my dad was about to do, she stopped him and told him to add blueberries to it anyways. Obviously, I didn't really like it, so I started carefully picking the blueberries out of the pancake so I could eat them before I could even start eating. She took my plate away and threw it in the trash, saying I wasn't allowed to eat for the rest of the day. I was too shocked to even cry, just bottling it up and remaining quiet on the couch. We weren't allowed to take anything from their fridge, so I just had to sit there and watch the rest of everyone eat without me. Luckily, while she was taking a shower, my dad manages to make a small bowl of those little baby pickles for me to munch on, so I had something in my stomach. This continued for years. They would make something they knew I wouldn't like, and I tried my best to eat what I could. I would ask for ketchup, and she would yell at me about how disgusting I was for wanting that on her cooking. Every dinner, I would beg for it, even if it was for food I liked, but I required that delicious tomato paste. They refused to give it to me. Eventually, I started eating really fast. The tastes and textures made me want to vomit, but I was sick of coming back to my mum's house and straight up devouring the whole fridge. His girlfriend again yells at me for eating too fast. Every single time, she would take my food away, and I wasn't allowed to eat anything for the rest of the day. My sister and I would have to sit there and watch them grab snacks and lunches for themselves, shoving food down their gullets while we had to find something to do, afraid of getting yelled at if we sat on the couch for too long, while they would sit there all day on their phones. It came to a point where I was terrified to ask for a glass of water in their house. My sister and I would try and come up with excuses to not go there, to which my dad would then guilt trip us. "Oh well, I guess I have to tell your baby sister why her sisters aren't coming over." So we had to go, not allowed to bring our games, not allowed to bring homework, had to sit and wait for food and hope it wasn't taken away. I was too afraid to say anything, and when I did say something, I was screamed at about how much of a pathetic dummy I was. Because of this, I was, and still am, the slowest eater of all my friend groups. I would always ask for permission to do things such as use the bathroom, grab a cup of water, ask if I accidentally grabbed too much food, and if I should put it back, if it's okay to have seconds. This leads me to starving myself of food because I didn't believe I deserved it. In dance, I had the worst self-esteem, comparing my body to these very thin and teeny girls. I would weigh myself over a dozen times a day, covering mirrors because I didn't want to see how gross my body was developing into something I hated, and still getting ridiculed and yelled at about my weight from this girlfriend. I was throwing up my meals and stayed in one spot, either on the couch or a hermit in my bedroom, drawing to try and pass the time, only to get yelled at for being a lazy bum. I think you all know where this is going. To spare the graphic details, my mum had to rush me to hospital. On the way there, my mum was chewing my dad a new butthole through the phone, yelling at him about how much weight I've lost, how his girlfriend was not to treat me like that, a whole lot of things that I couldn't remember. My dad did come to see me. I thought maybe, since he was alone and away from his girlfriend, he would apologize and just, be a father, but instead, what he said absolutely broke me. "Why on earth would you do this to yourself? You're 15. You should know better. I just don't understand why you would do something so stupid." I just started sobbing. I was in the hospital and he couldn't understand that he and his girlfriend led me to this place. I didn't know what to say to him. All I could do was stutter and rock back and forth to try and soothe myself, but he just kept asking those same questions. He left as my mum enters. All I could do was cry at that point. I went to different counselors and therapists. The end of my 8th grade year was me going from doctor to doctor, but I was too scared to explain why and or talk about what I felt, in fear of getting yelled or ridiculed at. I wish this had a happier ending. My mum, I love her so much. She's straight up a mama bear. Full on reprimanding my dad was definitely a relief, because it felt like she was saying all the things I wish I could say. I think it's completely obvious that this girlfriend was just projecting all of her own insecurities. She had her own weight issues herself, and obviously she struggled with gluttony. It just seems so shocking, like how could they write to somebody else's face be like, you're eating too much, when clearly they do the same thing. Guaranteed if she was to speak back and claim that, no, I'm not the one with that issue, you're the one who has that issue, she would turn it all around and pretend like she's the victim. It's a lose-lose situation. The best way to win is to not play the game.
Submit your story to be read on the channel at voiceyherestories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.